Well, hello, Freedomizers. Welcome to Zone 13, the best afternoon news show on the web. Today's Thursday, May 14th, 2015. It's 3 p.m. on the East Coast. It's noon Pacific. We're broadcasting live from the studios of FreedomizerRadio.com. I'm Joanne Moretti, and Scott Ferrarello, my great co-host, is with me, and we appreciate you tuning in. Thank you very much. Our chat rooms, both at Blog Talk Radio and right here at FreedomizerRadio.com, are open for you. Several of our colleagues, including Lynn, AstroTurf, Famous Anna, are in the chat rooms putting the links, documents, and other important information into the chats so you have them for your own records. And thank you for that nice courtesy, ladies. Remember, they're also journalists, analysts, researchers, and the best in the business. Today we have a ton of news and updates to get to, but first I'd like to do a short disclaimer, and that's just to let anybody who may be interested know that the things said on this show are solely my responsibility and not that of our wonderful hosts or sponsors. The disclaimer goes like this. The comments made by hosts, guests, chat commenters, or phone callers of Zone 13 do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints, ideology, beliefs, or anything else of FreedomizerRadio.com, their sponsors, or many valued advertisers, whether it be past, present, or future broadcasts. All right, now that we have that out of the way, let me open up Scott's microphone here and give him a proper introduction. Hey, Scott.
Hey, how you doing, Joanne?
Very good, very good. How are you?
Oh, fine.
Yeah? Man, there's a lot of news today, huh? All kinds of stuff going on. Train wrecks and more train wrecks and all kinds of stuff. I'm gonna go a little conspiratorial today. Usually I'm pretty grounded in reality, and we tell you the basic news and stuff, and we don't really go off abstract. But I am having a really, really hard time swallowing this train wreck thing. It could very well be true, but the inconsistencies are to the point where I can't buy it. Starting with, this train, they showed it was the middle of the night, and of course they had the helicopter and people milling around and stuff. I stayed up very late and I watched every bit of it. I grabbed every video that came out that, was posted by the passengers and pictures, everything I could grab. And I started looking them over. First of all, they're telling us that this train was traveling over 100 miles an hour, whether it was 106, 102, whatever. And it was on a turn on the tracks. Think about what would happen, even if you had an electric train set and you went whizzing around a corner. The train, first of all, the first locomotive wouldn't make it almost unscathed and have the second train car tear apart like it was just, blown to bits. And if the train was going straight and then came into the turn and it left the tracks, wouldn't it fly straight? It wouldn't make the turn. And the rear cars would follow the one that went off the tracks. It would be a half a mile away at least if it was doing 100 miles an hour in a straight trajectory. It wouldn't wrap around the tracks in the shape that the turn is. You'd think that it would just launch straight off the tracks in a straight line. You don't switch direction in midair. I find that very, very difficult to believe. And then all the photographs are coming in. There's one photograph of a couple of firemen doing a fireman's carry on a man. They appear to be running, and the guy isn't bleeding anywhere. His eyes are open. He looks like he's breathing. It's not like the Boston one where the guy's legs were blown off. But why are they running? They're on railroad ties. And if he's not bleeding and he's not breathing, then why would they be running, especially right towards that camera shot, down the center of the tracks? Would you not run beside the tracks? And even if you did get in the middle of the tracks, why would you be carrying a man and running on railroad ties? Isn't that a slip and fall hazard if it's not like an emergency? If they're just carrying him out of there, his legs may have been broken, whatever. But why run? That kind of bothered me. Plus, they told us about it. The FBI on May 8th had warned us that there was going to be an attack. I'll read the report. This is from CBS, and it's dated May 8th. Devices that could be used by terrorists to derail trains are being stolen from rail facilities around the country, the FBI warned today. 9 deraillers, a piece of railroad equipment used to derail train cars for safety purposes in rail yards, have been stolen recently, sources said, citing the FBI's weekly intelligence bulletin. The theft of these items is strange, since they are of little use outside the rail industry, according to the bulletin. Railroads have been targeted in the past by terrorists. It specifically mentioned the October 1995 derailment of an Amtrak train in Hyder, Arizona. In that incident, 1 person was killed and 78 were injured, when parts of the track were sabotaged. The FBI located a derail 50 miles from Hyder. All right, so not only did they tell us it was going to happen, they told us what equipment they were going to use to do it with. All right, so now think about the train wreck again. If that derailed doing 100 miles an hour, it would be far past that curve. It wouldn't be right at that curve. I'm starting to wonder if it wasn't an empty train and we're just being jerked around here. And maybe those alleged victims are crisis actors. I can't prove it, but there's just way too many inconsistencies. And then the mayor comes out, and I thought the mayor was doing a really good job too, and it looked like everybody was well coordinated, and we listened to the scanner and watched the live streams, and it did look pretty coordinated. And then I started thinking, it's way too coordinated. And then they were talking about having, and they needed more ambulances, and then other people were saying, well, they're just going to get in the bus. Why would they have, how could they get buses there, first of all? If you had all that equipment arriving at the scene, everything from ambulances to police and fire were at that scene, how'd you get buses in? Unless the buses were already there. It was once that type of a scene starts. Go ahead.
Maybe they had some left over from Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. All the rioters.
Yeah, well, like I said, it sounds conspiratorial. All right, so when you think you got a conspiracy going on, and then they had the second derailment. Let me get to that one first. They had the second derailment today, and that involved 10 cars. The cars were empty. It happened at 10:30 a.m. this morning at 2nd Avenue and Hot Metal Bridge, also in Pennsylvania. That train, too, looked like it just fell over, and it's wrapped around the turn. It's not in a straight line, and if you were being pulled or pushed at 100 miles an hour, you would go straight. You wouldn't just fall to the side. Do you remember Laughing? They had that guy on the bicycle and he used to fall sideways.
Right.
That's what these trains look like. They look like they just fell sideways. They didn't go straight then fall sideways. And how do those trains wrap around a curve like that? Why aren't some of them going straight?
The engineer had memory of the crash. I mean, what was he? Was he drunk? Was he asleep? What do you mean you have no memory of the crash?
That's another thing. If he was doing 100 miles an hour, and he was in that first train driving it, he'd be a half a mile from that turn. He wouldn't have just a concussion. He would have been all rolled over and dead. So why didn't the first car get damaged? Why was it the second car? Unless you had a derailer. And just as that first train went over it, they derailed the rest. Now, the first train, the locomotive, they're telling us that the guy was doing 100 miles an hour. How could he possibly be doing 100 miles an hour? That train is a brand-new train that just went into service in February. It is equipped with technology that raises and lowers the speed of that train according to the signals along the tracks. So it doesn't even need an engineer. So if it was going by the signals, he never could have gotten it up to 100 miles an hour. That thing wouldn't have let him go over 50 if that was the speed limit, or 20 or 30, whatever that turn was. That train would automatically slow itself down. You know, he's only there just in case something's on the tracks.
Yeah.
And stopping at stations.
Sounds like if somebody needs funding, insurance fraud.
There you go. Follow the money. All right. Amtrak was in this bill that they were working on yesterday. Now, the thing happened the night before last. All day yesterday, they were voting on a finance bill. In it was some cuts to Amtrak. Amtrak had actually asked for another $1.7 billion on top of what they already received. They wanted a $1.7 billion raise. And instead, the politicians were trying to cut it. I'm thinking that's what the second train rail thing was about. So now they're telling us it's about money. Well, how would money have kept this alleged engineer from going 100 miles an hour? Give him a few more bucks or take his foot off the gas? What? You know, it just doesn't make sense. But they're trying to say, oh, yeah, roads and bridges and infrastructure, and it's falling apart, and Amtrak has no money. We've given Amtrak over $3 billion in the last decade. So
yeah,
they
the
get
vice
plenty
president
of money.
Personally was promoting it.
Right.
A while
exactly.
Back.
You know, so, I mean, is this a means to an end? And what if there really were people on? What if they're not crisis actors and they did this? They told us they were going to do it. They always tell us. So unless this is an exercise, maybe part of Jade Helm, and still it's not real if it's Jade Helm. We're going to get to Jade Helm in a minute because I have some more questions that I have been meaning to ask. But now, Amtrak says, let's see here, why is the Washington Post lying to readers about Amtrak? Why is funding Amtrak such a struggle? The headline of a new Washington Post story by Philip Bump Blaze. Because Republican districts don't use it? Now, liberal ideology, you know, friends, co-conspirators in the media, have decided that yesterday's tragic Amtrak crash, which killed at least 7 people, was the fault of Republicans. Why? Because some Republicans think that after 40 years of posting billion-dollar annual losses, it might actually be time for Amtrak to live up to its statutory charter as a for-profit corporation. At least that's the left's line. As the Post's Colby Itzowitz noted, Congress has delayed passing legislation to fund Amtrak since 2013. The last time it did so, in 2008, the vote passed only after a rail disaster, which of course happened again Tuesday night. Okay, so that's how they got it to pass in 2008, was with a rail disaster. Sound familiar? Anyhow, the constant struggle of Amtrak to get funding derives largely from the fact that not very many Americans use the rail system. Ridership is heavily centered in the Northeast, in the corridor between Boston and Washington, where Tuesday's accident occurred. But more than that, ridership is unevenly distributed politically. Data from National Association of Railway Passengers shows the number of passengers that get on or off at the train in any given congressional district, and it reveals an obvious reason why Republicans might not be too concerned about the funding system. In the red areas, they don't really even have the Amtrak. You know, they're city to city, and most cities are in Democrat areas. Anyhow, Amtrak has received over $30 billion in cash payments from federal taxpayers since it was created in 1970. And if that constitutes a struggle, then for the love of all that's holy, sign me up for the struggle. We should all be so lucky to struggle with the burden of flushing tens of billions of dollars of free money down the toilet every year. The most fascinating aspect of the Washington Post exercise in Amtrak fan fiction, though, is what's missing from the story, namely any and all information whatsoever about Amtrak funding. You'd think the story with Amtrak funding in its headline would have some information about Amtrak funding, wouldn't you? Well, you'd be wrong. There's zero information about Amtrak funding in the story. And then there's the blatantly false and deliberative deceitful claim by Philip Pump that Congress hasn't passed any funding for Amtrak since 2013. That's also a complete lie. If he read his own newspaper, he'd know that the $1.1 trillion spending bill signed by Obama last December included $1.4 billion in funding for Amtrak. Now they want another $1.7. So, you know, that'll be $3.1 billion in addition to what they already get. But, there was no facts in it, and, sure, it's all the liberals that take the train and stuff, but if you're going to put out an article that says it's not being funded, make sure it's not being funded, because not only is it being funded, they want a raise. And they tell you to yourself. First, they tell you there's going to be a train accident. And then in 2008, when they weren't going to get the funding, there was a train accident, and they got their funding, didn't they? Well, they didn't get their funding yesterday, so today there was another train accident. How convenient, huh?
Yeah.
It's fishy. Fishy, fishy, fishy.
You can't believe anything you see on the news today because, most of it's staged terror and manufactured news. That's what it is.
Yeah. And, people know that. People know that the media lies to you every single day. But whenever you come up with a story pointing out inconsistencies like this, they'll call you a conspiracy theorist.
Well, during
so
the Boston
you want to believe the people that you absolutely know are lying to you.
During that Boston thing, they had the guy with his legs blown off in a wheelchair, and there was no blood anywhere. I mean, he'd bleed to death if that happened. It was ridiculous.
Plus, you'd be writhing in pain. Yeah. So when they need money, they blow something up. I'm telling you guys, that train probably was moving, but it was probably moving about 10 miles an hour. I seriously doubt that there was anybody on board that train, including, and then this engineer. They said he's a gay activist. He's like militant in his support for gay.
Walmart employee.
Yeah, a Walmart employee. They said that he went to Columbia University and he has a bachelor's in business administration. What's he doing working at Walmart as a clerk? He wasn't there as any kind of a businessman. He was there as a clerk. And then, how do you go from a Walmart clerk to being an engineer on a train?
Yeah, who knows?
And not only that train makes that trip 3 times a day. So it's not like anybody would be surprised by that turn. You trained on it, and then you ride it 3 times a day for your whole career as an engineer, however long that was. So you know that turn's coming. And that train did not launch. That train, look at the pictures. Yeah, the second train, did you see the twisted metal? I mean, that thing was twisted like an accordion. But not the first train, not the engine. And like I said, if you're going 100 miles an hour and you come up on a turn, you're not going to make the turn. No part of your train is going to make the turn. You're just going to launch straight ahead past that curve. And then the accident today with the empty cargo train there, if you look at the trains that are off the tracks, the wheels are still on the tracks for one of the cars, and the wheels are beside the tracks for another car. How did 4 sets of wheels come off of 2 cars, and how did it flip over, but the wheels stayed on the tracks, separated from the body of the rail car, from the hopper? How did those wheels stay upright and the train flipped over? Were they even attached to the train at all? That's, again, fishy. They want the money. Follow the money. And it's Biden. Biden takes the train all the time. He wasn't on it. Plus, the first person who did tweet it out was Congressman McCarthy. And Mayor Nutter, I thought he was doing a good job initially. He's out there and he's toiling and there's people milling around and all of that all night. The next day, yesterday, he shows up, he's got on a golf shirt, brand new golf shirt, and it's a Clinton Global Foundation logo on his golf shirt. Okay, so you even got product placement and advertising in this little soiree they've got going on. Today he was in a suit. Today he was in a nice suit with a tie. But yesterday he's in a Clinton Global Initiative golf shirt. Somebody had to have handed that to him because it was brand new.
Yeah, here, put this on.
Yeah,
you need to put
product placement. I just
No,
don't understand.
They wanted him to wear a Hillary 2016 hat and blow a kazoo,
Probably.
but he thought that was a little over the top.
Yeah, really. Why didn't they just have somebody riding, running around with their pre-printed signs or something there? I was looking at the makeshift boo-boos and the people, and I didn't see any familiar faces, but I didn't look at the faces as well as I could have. Another video that came out right away was a very short video on Instagram, and it shows somebody saying, "This way, sir, this way," and then it shows a light on a guy with a white shirt on, a white dress shirt, long sleeve, and he's coming out from underneath something, and he's asking, "Which way should I go?" And the guy's saying, "Follow my voice." Well, the guy's got blood all over his shirt. If any one of you have had a cut, you know that from where the cut is, you bleed downward because of gravity. Or if you're lying forward, you'll bleed, but it will pool. This guy's shirt looks like somebody took a spray bottle and just sprayed fake blood on him because it spatters. So unless it's someone else's blood, and they had an arterial hemorrhage and there was blood shooting everywhere, and this guy got hit with it.
Well, I'm
just finding it hard to swallow.
I can't wait to see the videos and the analysis that comes out in the next couple weeks, because people aren't fooled anymore, and they'll pick it apart piece by piece,
Yeah, well.
But, it won't matter, because they'll move on. Tomorrow there'll be another tragedy, another scandal, and another, national disaster or something.
Yeah.
And everybody will forget about it by next Tuesday.
Yep. And like I said, maybe it's a drill, and they're getting their coordination down. But it's definitely something is amiss. I could be very wrong, but I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at it closely, and I'm doing trajectories, and I'm looking at angles, and speed and velocity and things like that, and it just doesn't add up. It shouldn't be where it is. It's just laying like it just tipped over at the turn.
The fact that the guy doesn't remember the crash, that's a red light right there. I mean,
the fact that he survived it all.
He couldn't remember a story that he was told to remember. It's almost like he's afraid to perjure himself because he knows it's BS. Yeah,
well, the best thing to do is to lawyer up and shut up if this is legit. However, I don't think it's legit. And the guy's got a concussion. He should be dead. He was driving the car, driving the train. So if he was launched at 100 miles an hour off the tracks, why didn't that engine flip all over the place? And then they said that the cars were designed to break apart. Well, if they were designed to break apart, they would still be going in a straight line because of the force of the 100-mile-an-hour trajectory behind them. They would still be pushed straight or buckled. They wouldn't wrap around. When you're launched off the tracks, you don't take a right or a left and wrap around that track.
Yeah, let's see the satellite footage of that, I mean, they're watching the whole planet with satellites. Let's see the satellite footage of it happening.
Yeah, well, even if you see the pictures, somebody took, highlighter and highlighted the shape of the trains around the turn. And, they are buckled there, but that would be from something behind it pushing the ones forward, would buckle them out like that. Because if you were being dragged, it's like, look at a bicycle chain. Lay a bicycle chain on the ground. If you pull it, it stays straight. If you push it, it buckles out. But if you're pulling that chain fast, everything behind it is going to stay in a straight line. And if you try to turn it around, if you try to whip it around, it still would go straight until it tugs. So that first train, that first engine would have gone straight off the tracks at the turn. See what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, all right, if you're driving your car and you're getting off the highway and you're doing 100 miles an hour and it's one of those hairpin turns, if you don't make that turn, you're going straight, getting launched straight off that overpass. Your car's not, and if you go straight, yeah, but if you go straight off there and if you fail to negotiate that turn, you're going to go straight into whatever's straight ahead. Your car's not going to veer to the right or the left in midair. It's going straight. So how are you going to end up on the right side of that right turn? It's not going to happen. You'd end up straight ahead. At least that's my opinion on it.
I know.
I'm not buying it. Nothing is adding up for me. So until I can get it straight in my head, I stopped posting about it. I stopped putting the stories out about it because I don't believe any of them anymore. Not when I'm doing my own research here, and I'm not an idiot. I know.
Our news don't do any investigative reporting. The news just says, okay, that's the official statement. That must be true.
Yeah.
They're parrots.
Exactly. They said, okay, the guy was going 106 miles an hour and slowed down to 102. Okay. Well, even 102 miles an hour.
He doesn't look like an engineer. He looks like he does look like a Walmart employee, though.
Yeah, I'm thinking we're dealing with some crisis actors here. Let's move on a little. Let's talk about some Jade Helm stuff because I got a couple of questions about this, too. This Jade Helm. All right, we all know that it's in 7 states, but they got something going on in North Carolina right now, too. I forget the name of this, but we talked about it last week on the show that they're training SWAT officers in Richland County in South Carolina. Well, they're training them for house-to-house raids. I didn't know that part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it says this is from InfoWars, by the way. Yeah, well, I got a question. And remember we saw the Jade Helm video and the hearing. Remember Joe Biggs was there from the InfoWars? Well, everybody asked questions except, all the answers were this is a military exercise and this is for overseas contingencies. Well, if it's a military exercise and they're training for overseas things, why does it involve our local police? They're not going overseas. Nobody asked that question.
Yeah, well, it isn't for overseas. It's all BS.
Right. And then house to house, door to door. This says the late night pre-dawn exercises. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's gun confiscation, just like it said in the UN document a long time ago when Jay Helm was mentioned. Gun confiscation law on the books.
Right.
But they're not going to tell people that. They're going to lie to your face, just like everybody else does.
Yeah, well, people will call you a conspiracy theorist, but then they'll tell you stories like George Stephanopoulos donated $50,000 to the Clinton Foundation, but he was grilling Peter Schweitzer on that book, Clinton Cash, saying, well, there's no story here. And then, with the other stuff they tell us, it's all BS. Somebody said the guy was going 100 miles an hour, and everybody else ran with the story. And then when they're telling you something, they say, anything we say here is preliminary, and we're leaning towards this. But everybody ran with it.
And there's a revolving door policy within organizations that look out for each other. You have the media and political administrations revolving door. They go from being in the media to being in the administration, or the media person is married to somebody. And you have FDA and Monsanto revolving door. It's the bankers and the DOJ. I mean, they're just everybody's a
the bankers are married to politicians, and their kids are news people, and so it's all sewed up. And back to this North Carolina thing. It says previous exercises conducted by the 3rd Special Forces Group showed troops conducting house-to-house raids and arresting individuals at gunpoint. Residents in Lower Richland County have been warned that they may encounter military vehicles and hear ordinances being set off or shots being fired. According to Sheriff Leon Lott, deputies will provide simulated scenarios for the military. while Richmond County will provide an ideal location for training that cannot be replicated at Fort Bragg. And it says during a similar drill last year, journalists were barred from reporting on the exercise. So concerns over drills such as this have heightened since the announcement of Jade Helm. That's a nationwide military exercise to begin in July, during which troops will operate undercover amongst local populations. You know, and all these cops are involved in it and in the exercises, and they're providing scenarios. So, like I said, the cops are not training for overseas missions. So why are they being trained? Why did Obama and all of them provide all of these MRAPs and munitions and checkpoints and everything else for local police?
Because they're going to be federalized. They're going to be one big happy Gestapo soon.
Yep, Hillary was calling for that today, too. And so is Dianne Feinstein. They want to federalize the police, but you know what that does? That gives them a standing domestic army that operates on U.S. soil. That still violates posse comitatus. They're going to tell you they're local police. But they're even saying, like police departments that have less than 10 cops, they said that they're not going to give them any federal funding, no help with SWAT teams unless they join up with the feds and join the coalitions to help out in other SWAT situations in other municipalities around them. So he is using strong-arm tactics, coercion, bribery, threats. All sounds like RICO crimes.
Oh, he doesn't even have to do that. The GOP's just more than eager to help him out.
Right.
I mean, there's nobody representing the people of this country, and there hasn't been for a very long time.
Mm-hmm. And you know, Scott, you're absolutely right, too, about the media. As a matter of fact, Obama said something that, I mean, just chilled me right to my bone when I heard it. People hear him, but they don't listen to him. What he said the other day, I mean, I was like, whoa.
Yeah, about Fox News.
Yeah, he was going after Fox, but what he said was, we're going to have to change how the media reports.
Yeah, well, they already have it pretty much in the bag. The only thing is they don't have, a couple of people, Fox News for the other 40 time they report that isn't BS, Drudge Report.
Yeah.
Alternate,
media.
Judge
by name.
So what they're saying is, get ready because my FCC, Nazis are coming after everybody that isn't toeing the line and pushing my communist totalitarian agenda.
Right. This is a direct quote, what he said. He said, and so, if we're going to change how Representative John Boehner and Senator Mitch McConnell think, we're going to have to change how our body politic thinks, which means we're going to have to change how the media reports on these issues. So, he is going to change the way the Republicans think. All right? He's going to have to change the way the civilians, our body politics think. So that's called brainwashing. And in order to do it, he's going to have to change how the media reports on these issues. And then he pulled the boogeyman out of his rear end, Fox News, and all the liberals like, yeah, I hate Fox News, shut him down, shut him down. Well, folks, he cannot make rules just for Fox News. One for all for one. E pluribus unum.
Sure he
from
can.
Many, one.
Oh no, they can start picking and choosing, just like the IRS picks and choose who they go after, just like these other organizations in the administration only singled out Tea Partiers and right wingers for certain things. Now you can pick and choose. You could say net neutrality and fairness and everything, and you could make the Drudge Report have 25 stories linking them to crappy liberal websites instead of conservative websites, but then not hold the same standard for liberal places.
Oh, absolutely.
The exact same thing, the exact same method is how they make Christians cave in to gay weddings and whatnot, but gay bakeries and Muslims don't have to follow it.
Yeah.
So yeah, they can pick and choose. which he will.
Right. Yeah. And then, Pam Geller, what she did with the Dra Muhammad cartoons, and she smoked out a couple of terrorists who ended up dead. They're more worried about what she said than those dead terrorists who were hell-bent on creating destruction. And let me tell you, folks, if they didn't do it there, they had intended to do it somewhere. That just happened to be an opportunity. But if they didn't do it there, where were they going to do it? At your kid's school? Maybe a mall? Bus station, train? Anyhow, but they pull her out. Oh, yeah, Pam Geller, she's blaspheming, kill her. You can say whatever you want about Christians or Jews or Hindus. You just can't say anything about Muslims because then you're a bigot. Even though the Muslims want to kill you and they want to kill gays and they want to kill feminists, they don't like women who open their mouth very much at all. Women are just for raping, they're not for talking to. The gays, they launch them right off of a building, or they hang them in public, or they shoot them in public. As a matter of fact, they just lined a whole bunch of them up along the waterfront in blue outfits. You know how they've been using orange outfits when they behead somebody? Well, they didn't behead these ones. They just shot them. And they were gays. They were using honey traps to smoke them out. But anyhow, they'll tell you Pam Geller's bad. And everybody says, oh, yeah, she's bad. Kill her, kill her. Let's make some laws against her. She shouldn't be blaspheming. Okay, so you're going to have free speech except for Pam Geller? That's not how it works, folks. If you take away Pam Geller's free speech, you're taking away your own free speech, too. Because if Pam Geller can't do it, then neither can you. And then, who gets to decide that? And what if they decide they don't like what you have to say? They're going to say, oh, kill her, build her up as a straw man. What if they don't like what I have to say? They're going to say, oh, yeah, she's saying all that rotten stuff, and, you guys have to have some new laws to shut her up. And everybody will say, oh, yeah, shut her up. We don't like what she says. But once they got those new laws in their hands, they can shut up whomever they choose. Because they can't make a law for just me.
This is what's wrong with that crowd that's out there that says, well, we believe it's free speech, but that was crossing the line. When you start compromising your rights, you're going to compromise them away to zero. Because today it's drawing cartoons, and tomorrow it's because you're a woman and you're driving a car.
Yeah, well, how many times have we talked about little kids drawing guns or biting a Pop-Tart or, using their finger?
Yeah, well, that's Eric Holder's, plan to brainwash the public on guns every day. Suspend kids for bringing biting a Pop-Tart, and it looks like an L. That's too close to a gun.
If we hadn't flipped out and stopped them from making new laws, the little 7-year-old would be doing 10 years for zero-tolerance gun crimes.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, if you replicate a gun, and they said, well, pointing your finger at somebody, that's replicating a gun. So the kid's going to do 10 years because they have mandatory 10-year sentencing.
Unless you're the President of the United States, then you can point a gun in the mirror and make goofy faces, and you're way cool.
Yeah, go pow. Like
he did, when he was taking those selfies with his selfie stick.
Yeah.
Can you even imagine, a former president taking pictures of himself and making funny faces in the mirror? I mean, even Carter, as much of a whack job he was, I can't see him looking in the mirror, sticking his tongue out, taking photos of himself.
The first time I saw that headline, Obama was playing with his selfie stick, I laughed so hard. I had never heard of a selfie stick before. And I was like,
which
how did anybody see him?
Right. Too much information.
No
TMI.
Kidding.
I don't want to know.
Explain some of that stuff. I don't want to know anything about that. Anyhow, all this partisan stuff. Supposed to hate the Democrats or hate the Republicans and hate Fox News and hate Pam Geller and love terrorists and don't ever ask a question.
Why is he even saying the Republicans need to change their minds? And I mean, they couldn't.
No, they have to change how they
couldn't
think.
Kiss
period.
his butt more.
Yeah, well,
they could shut him down on everything, and They trip over each other, kissing his ass.
Yeah, well, he wants to change how people think. If we're going to change how Representative John Boehner and Senator Mitch McConnell think, we're going to have to change how our body politic thinks, which means we're going to have to change how the media reports on these issues. So he just said he's changing the Republicans' way of thinking, the politicians, and he's going to have to change the way that we think, which is re-education, propaganda, brainwash, whatever, and he's going to do it by way of the media. He's told the media that they're going to have to change us all. Yeah.
Remember a couple years ago, he wanted the entire human brain mapped out? Remember that? No, really. I'm serious.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
I laugh because of disbelief. I believe it, and I know it's true. But how have we gotten to this point?
It sounds like science fiction, but it isn't anymore.
No, it isn't. It's actually real.
One of these days, they'll be able to flip a switch, and cell phones and cell phone towers will be putting out some sort of brainwave signature, and, it'll turn you into an instant zombie.
Yeah, well...
Like most of the people are, in the public aren't zombies already, walking down the street staring into a 2-inch screen, oblivious to what's going on around them.
I think that's what bothers me most, is people are oblivious. You tell people stuff, and you show it to them, and you prove it to them, and they get it. But the next day, here they are posting that same stuff again, and it's like, what the hell is... Didn't you hear us? Didn't you see us? Can't you see it for yourself?
Well, most people, they feel helpless, because really, and I don't blame them, because what can you do?
We
All
are
you can do is complain. You can pretend, they've been trying to vote the bums out for 100 years. That doesn't work. You can have a 1 million-man march in D.C. That doesn't work. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
The answer is all of us have to be on the same page, but it's way too late to train people. So I hope people can take orders from people who do know what's going on, because it's come to the point now where they're talking about this Trans-Pacific Partnership thing. All right, that not only disarms us, but it devalues us. It takes away our sovereignty. It takes away our right to even make our own immigration laws.
This is why it bothered me when people were sticking up for Harry Reid, last week, thinking that, he's doing the right thing, and Liz Warren, she's trying to do the right thing. No, they just know it's going to pass anyway, so it'll look good to oppose it like they don't want it, when they know it's going to happen anyway, just like this federal policing thing.
What this Trans-Pacific Partnership, that I can gain from it, because let me tell you how they have this set up, first of all. Before we even talk about what's in it. If a politician wants to see this Trans-Pacific Partnership, Rand Paul says it's 800 pages. They have to go into a room, a locked room like a vault. They cannot bring their staff with them. They cannot bring a cell phone, any type of recording equipment. They can bring a piece of paper and a pen, but whatever notes they take, they need to leave those notes there in that room when they leave. The clerk inside this room gives them 1 page at a time to read. They take the 1 page, they read it, then they hand it back to the person before that person will hand them another page. They can't just take the whole 800 pages, put it on a desk, and just sit there for a few hours and read it. Every single page is logged, documented, and returned before they can get another page. So why is it that high of a classification? And then you have Alan Grayson. Alan Grayson is, the guy's even got wild eyes. He's a screwball. He's a hardcore left Democrat. He's screaming. He even put out a video how bad this is. He did read it. And he made a whole PowerPoint display and everything. Then you have Elizabeth Warren. Now, she's a full-blown communist. And she's all about the communism. So if she doesn't like it, she despises it. She read it, too. And then you have Senator Sessions. Senator Sessions is a hardcore conservative. He also read it. And he says it's despicable, it's bad. He can't go into details because they can't disclose the contents, the same as they all said. But they're warning us it's bad. It's so bad that Elizabeth Warren is freaking out over it and getting in a fight with the President of the United States over it. That's how bad it is.
That's all fake. That's all fake.
It is all fake. It is all fake. Harry Reid, he never signed it. He never let a treaty through yet. That's the only thing Harry Reid has done right in his whole tenure is he doesn't like treaties. And I don't blame him for that. Neither do I. Rand Paul now is in the place reading it. And he come out and he said he sees no reason why it should be classified, no reason why it shouldn't be in public. There is nothing classified in there. So we're just getting jerked. Now, they're playing a game. They're using this for horse trading. The Democrats don't like it. We know that. Now, they're telling us that the Republicans do like it. Well, what is it that they do like about it? None of them have read it. Lee, he read it. Senator Lee, he read it. But he said he didn't have any opinion on it yet. He wants to do more research in it. But the rest of them that did read it, they don't want it. And everybody else who's talking about it has not read it yet. So they're doing the same trash to us. You got to pass it to see what's in it. They don't even have the decency to read it. And what is with all this high secrecy for a trade deal?
It's all because somebody else writes them all, including Obamacare, written by the insurance companies. And the politicians are bought, paid for, and placed in office just to rubber stamp stuff. And I think they're just doing this secrecy thing just to rub it in people's faces that you have absolutely no power to stop anything.
That's a good point. That's a intimidation tactic. Astro says, Paul Ryan was on Fox and Friends this morning making the claim that if the U.S., meaning Obama, doesn't define the trade parameters, then China will. Of course. And he lost all credibility, long ago. Yeah, he did with me, too. He was a sellout. But still, she's right.
Yeah, guess who's says it's a great idea, along with Obama. Rick Perry,
they say it's a
Texas.
And they want to give the dude
it's a good idea.
Well, they want to give Obama fast track authority on this too. Fast track. So this is absolutely a treaty, ladies and gentlemen. There's no such thing as fast track. We have a constitutional republic. It's any treaty is already set up.
We used to.
Well, the parameters should be set up. But if you're giving him fast track, he can make any deal he wants, and then they're going to have 60 days to look it over. Same with the Iran deal. They're calling it a deal. That's a treaty, too. But the Constitution has to pass, the Senate has to pass it with 2/3 to ratify any treaty. So they're even surrendering. They're surrendering their own. They're surrendering their branch to him.
They don't care.
They don't get to change the Constitution. They didn't put up an amendment.
And neither does the Supreme Court. The whole reason there was 3 branches of government was in the hopes that each branch would be fighting for power and never let one of them get too big. But now you've got it to where everybody is just, oh, sure, you want to be a dictator? You want to just bark out laws and orders and change laws on the fly? Sure, be my guest.
Well,
they can't do it fast enough for him.
Yeah, another reason I don't think they want us to see it, because they know that the American public will start doing some research. What businesses, what corporations are benefiting from this? What goodies are in it, as Astro says? So say Obama is vested in Chicago Climate Exchange, and that's represented, and he's going to benefit in this. Of course he's going to be for it. And all you got to do is trace back their trust funds and their blind trusts and their investments. Just like we knew Stephanopoulos gave $50,000 to the Clinton Foundation. All right, how hard is it going to be to figure out these companies that benefit with this trade agreement and who's vested in them? And we already know that they're allowed to do insider trading. Always follow the money. Who makes money on this? And it's certainly not us. And as far as setting the perimeters, China will do that. Obama couldn't negotiate a picnic. So
well, they're going to be
China's
the big deal on
it.
the block now anyway, So
sure they are.
And our military is being phased out. It's all going to the United Nations, basically, in NATO. And our economy and everything else is all going to China. The United States is going to be nothing but a third world crap hole in a few years. So
yeah, and we're going to have product placement everywhere. Microsoft will own most of California into Arizona, and the medical device companies, they'll own most of the Northeast, and, down the south will be the sugar companies and the farms, and, Monsanto, they'll own the whole South. We don't have any sovereignty. They get to bring in whatever workers they want without ever having to go to an immigration office for them.
That's right.
Foreign international law will be the normal law. We don't have any sovereign republic. And no wonder they want to hide it from us. But there's no way that should be secret. And there's no way that we should allow anybody to vote on it until it's not secret. We don't say, okay, we trust you. We don't trust anybody anymore. We don't trust the government. We don't trust the media. That's more than evident. So why would you trust him to make a fast-track deal? And why would you trust these politicians who are allowing it, knowing full well that they can insider trade without any consequence whatsoever?
They've probably already been told, you pass this, you rubber stamp this, and you're going to get a big bonus at the end of the rainbow.
No kidding. Just like all that stimulus money went to those dummy companies that were all related to a donor or to a politician or a kid of a politician. Just like all the rest of it. Look at this Amtrak money. Look at all this money that we put out there for roads and bridges. We didn't even have a budget. We had continuing resolutions. So every time, all right, say we gave Amtrak $1 billion a year. With a continuing resolution, they got another $1 billion the next year. And when it continued, they got another $1 billion the next year. Otherwise, it would have had to set up a whole new budget and pass a whole new budget. Instead, they didn't do that. They did continuing resolutions. We paid for that fence, the border fence, 5 times.
Yep.
Because of continuing resolutions. Amtrak got their billions 5 times. So.
Yeah, they're all just front companies, money laundering operations.
And how much of that money ever hit the streets? Did you see the potholes up in the Northeast, up in the North, the Midwest, and all of that?
It's just like these charity organizations. You give them money and they skim 80-90% off the top. It goes into someone's pocket, and you're lucky if 10% reaches the original destination. Yeah,
after everybody gets greased. If any of it hits the streets. Look at Baltimore. They get $14,000 per student per year with education grants. $14,000? You can go to parochial school for $3 and get a way better education.
Everything is like this. Everything's like this. Even the court systems. The judge, if he puts somebody in jail, he gets a percentage of that money that jail makes into his pension. Everything is an incentive to screw the common person.
Yeah. Absolutely. Every bit of it. Look at the money for Chicago. They just got downgraded to junk. Okay? And they have this thing called promise zones. And they have 50 different cities that are in these promise zones. And they're like Detroit and Cleveland and St. Louis and Baltimore and all those, really bad cities. They give them billions and billions of dollars. Why are they in such a mess? And why are they bankrupt? How come the money didn't go to where it was intended to go?
There's no
hardest
oversight
hit,
at all.
and promise zones. Those are the names of the. Go ahead.
There's no oversight at all. You know, it's just here's a bunch of money. Don't steal any. But boy, if you try to save $20-30 on your taxes, you know, they're going to be looking at you with a microscope.
Yeah, absolutely they are. And they'll put you in jail too. Al Sharpton isn't going to jail anytime soon, and George Soros isn't going to jail anytime soon. But you try it. And all these billions and billions. You know why George Soros said he didn't pay his taxes? He said because if he gave it to the government, it would just get gobbled up in a matter of minutes. So he thinks that he can do better with the money than the government, so he's not giving it to them.
Well, yeah, and all he has to do is kick up a few billion to Don Cornholio, and they give him a pass for it. They tell the DOJ to leave him alone. You know, Securities Exchange Commission, leave him alone. He's got a license to steal.
Yeah, but he told us to our faces that he could use the money better than we could. The government's just going to swallow it up, so why bother giving it to him?
Well, he's right.
Actually, we should. He is right. We should all adopt that. Can you imagine if everybody said, well, I think I can spend the money a lot better. I think I'll go and fix a pothole with it and not even look at you.
Income tax. Everybody's income tax. It doesn't go to the military. It doesn't go to this and that they think it does. It all goes to pay interest on debt we don't even owe.
Right. We owe it to ourselves. How's that work?
It's just like everybody says, we're $18 billion in debt. We're $18 billion in debt. Okay, well, who are you in debt to? Who is actually getting this money that you're $18 billion in debt? You start all these wars everywhere. How about invading that country or business or whatever that you owe that $18 trillion to?
Yeah, well,
I said billion, and I keep forgetting it's trillion.
Yeah, well, they keep blowing money. They go into the trust that's supposed to be Social Security, which actually is an entitlement. The rest are not entitlements, but Social Security is. And that was a deal made with the
entitlement.
Sure it is. You're entitled to it. You put the money in, you're entitled to it in the end.
Yeah, that's true. Well, every time I hear the word entitlement,
you think welfare and food stamps.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but welfare and food stamps you're not entitled to.
They're successfully brainwashing me.
Yeah, they've been brainwashing everybody. They'll call everything an entitlement, when actually the veterans' benefits and Social Security are entitlements. Everything else is not. Everything else is other programs that were implemented. You're not entitled to. You may qualify for.
And remember, that was supposed to be in an untouchable fund that they couldn't get to? Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you open up that...
Spent that the first week.
You open up that Social Security vault, and all you're going to find is IOUs. So that's some of the debt we owe. We loaned it to ourselves from the Social Security. Now Social Security is going bankrupt, and people are saying, oh, yeah, well, we got to, get rid of the little old ladies and, euthanize them or something because we don't have the money. It was their money you stole. You stole their money, and now you don't want to pay them back, so you want to euthanize them. Okay. Nice deal you got going there. The same with the veterans. I just read a story about some guy who got out of his car and his ankle popped, and it just swelled up beyond belief. He wasn't near his house. So he dropped off his wife somewhere. He drove himself to the VA hospital, the nearest VA hospital. He can't get out of the car now. The foot is too swollen. The pain is excruciating. So he called the VA hospital, the front desk, and asked if they would send somebody out front, that he was just a short distance from the entranceway and he could not get out of his car to go in. They yelled at him and hung up on him, told him to call 911. So the guy calls 911, and 911's like, what are you talking about? You mean you're really in the parking lot of the VA? He said, yes, they won't come out and help me in. I can't get out of my car. I cannot walk. So an ambulance came that he had to pay for. They wheeled him into the front desk, into the emergency room. But they would not send somebody out to go get that veteran. 25 feet from the door.
Yeah. Well, he should have called the VA And he should have said, no comprende, you know, spoken broken English and somehow, you know, asked for a wheelchair in Spanish, and he probably would have got some help right away.
Unreal. Unbelievable.
I mean, I wouldn't even go to the VA if I was a veteran. You know, it's like a leper colony.
I know.
Go to
you know
a
what the
regular
sad part
hospital.
is we owe them the best medical attention we can afford and get for them. You know, we owe them everything. You know, we can do better. I just get disgusted when I talk about stuff like that.
Because this whole country is done. It's over. Stick a fork in it. There's no coming back from this. And that's why you have military training with police to go to your house and to take you away. Because it's over. And they know it, and everybody knows it.
I didn't want to believe that either. You know that? I resisted that, and I tried to stay grounded, and I didn't want to hear it about, you know, all this Jade Helm stuff and how, you know, we should be paying attention to it, and I wanted to trust it. I really did. I wanted to trust it. But, you know, they're telling us that this is training for overseas. Well, our cops aren't going overseas. Why are you training our cops?
That's what I mean. You know, you can't trust anybody in the government, in the Pentagon, in the military, who is official spokesmen for these people, because they will lie to your face, and they have no problem doing it.
Yeah, you're right.
Anything to appease you so you'll shut up and go back to your football, your Dancing with the Stars, and your six-pack of beer. I mean, they had the Five on the other day, and Mr. Conservative Greg Gutfeld and the rest of the yahoos are all making fun of everybody that's pointing out facts about this Jade Helm thing. These are facts.
Yeah.
These are things that they themselves can go look up and find out are true. These
and
are
the thing
things
is they tell you those facts. Yeah,
they're not being hidden from the public. You know, they're in Army manuals, they're in DHS manuals, they're in, you know, in laws that have passed years ago by the UN for gun confiscation. They're everywhere.
And
but
the Trans-Pacific
you
Partnership.
Force them. It's easier to just mock people. And
that's exactly what you're doing.
Crap.
It's exactly Saul Alinsky. Pick your target, freeze it, polarize it. They did it to Palin. They even did it to Jeremiah Wright. Remember, they tried to make him out to be an old kook. They do it to everybody.
Jeremiah Wright is an old kook. Who you thinking of?
He's a maniac, but he's far from stupid. Oh, don't underestimate that man.
The black liberation freak. Well, he is a kook in my book.
But the way they try to make him out like he's a senile old uncle, he knows exactly what he's doing.
That doesn't matter. If he was a senile, even if he was a kook and a senile old uncle, what is a president of the United States, soon to be, doing in his church for 22 years, listening about how horrible white people are?
Yeah, well, that worked. They're all over that. Do you hear what his wife said? She really flipped me out, too. She was at a university giving a commencement speech.
You mean Miss Affirmative Action, First Lady? Benefited from affirmative action, got where she is because of the color of her skin. And, she's being
she better start checking her privilege.
Again.
You know, she stood there in front of those students and said, well, folks like me. First of all, she's a Princeton and a Harvard graduate. Who uses the word folks at Harvard or Princeton?
Her husband.
They don't.
They like using folks because it means white people, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, but then she's going on and on about how she was mistaken for the help and, you know what, it's beneath you to work. What if you were the help? Or what if, like the little old lady who couldn't reach the bundle at the top shelf? Maybe she didn't think you were the help. Maybe she just thought you were a tall person who could reach the item. How about she's going on and on about, you know, it wasn't always this way, and I've had my share of this. And she turned this whole commencement into a pity party for her poor self. And you know what? This woman takes multi-million-dollar vacations 4 times a year, separate from her husband. Separate planes, separate everything. Even the dog gets its own plane.
White people just don't realize how hard it is for someone like her to piss away $85,000 to haul her fat ass to a vacation spot she doesn't deserve.
Yeah, well, folks like her,
Joy,
including black people. What black person do you know that gets 4 vacations a year, walks around in hundreds of $1,000 gowns with sapphires and rubies and bling, sitting there dining with kings? What black person, folks like her, goes on ski trips to Vail? All right, she's telling these kids. She's telling these kids that they're victims. They're graduating. Isn't she supposed to be telling these people that they have a future ahead of them, and if they work hard and if they really are motivated, they can make it to the top? But here she is telling them they're victims and they're never going to be anything.
Well,
that's the part that bothers me.
She's not telling them, all lies there, because they're not going to be anything, and there is no future for them in this country. Now, if they want to learn Mandarin Chinese and go to China, they have a shot. But they're not going to be doing anything in this country unless they want to work for Al's traveling race-baiting circus and riot show.
Yeah, well, that's it. Unless you're an activist, you're never going to get anywhere. That's not true. Here's a whole bunch of kids graduating, and there was a predominantly black school. And, I would have been so depressed when I walked out of there. Here she is showing off, telling everybody how bad it is. If you're the first lady, that's all we have. We don't have anything else to offer. That's it. That's you're at the top here, honey. And it's still not good enough. This woman cannot be pleased. Nothing would be good enough for her. Those vacations, the clothes, the notoriety, the respect, the love. I mean, she has it all, and it's still not enough. And then Oprah did the same thing.
Yeah, I know they complain and talk about the plight of their life and how hard it is, and then they get in their stretch limousine.
The 2 most powerful women in the world crying their victims. And Hillary, the same thing. Oh, she was so broke and poor, pitiful, and she's trying to make people think that she is, like the regular middle-class person. No, she isn't. She's a filthy, rich shrew. She was never
driven
broke.
for 22 years because
she hasn't had to. She has a driver.
Right. That's what I mean. They don't. I mean, they don't even live on the same planet as we do.
Yeah, but she tries to make it sound like she's taking the bus. No, she isn't. She hasn't driven in 20 years because she hasn't had to. There's, she had a $10 million mansion when she walked out of that White House. She said she was broke. Didn't know where her next meal was coming from because she also had another $4 million mansion. And she didn't know where her next meal was coming from because she had 2 kitchens.
Her daughter's apartment cost $10 million alone in New York before she even got married.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anybody that has a $10 million apartment. Do you?
No, and where did the new son-in-law get the seed money for a $400 million investment fund?
Right.
Yeah, whose money's that? Well, she should have borrowed a few bucks off him if she was broke.
They're all
but, here's these people.
Yeah, the Queen of England was saying she was down to her last couple million a few years ago. That woman is a trillionaire. She owns more land on the planet than anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
She could give away $100 billion a day for the rest of her life, and you wouldn't even put a dent in her wealth. But it's
but you know what it is they and then they try to make wealth like a dirty word. I want everybody to be wealthy. I want everybody to be wealthy.
For everybody else, it's a dirty word. But for them, well, that's different. I'm not talking
you don't want to be wealthy, be one of the 1%, do you? Those rotten people. They're trying to kill your motivation.
Obama the other day was saying, well, these wealthy people, they just, they just don't care. They're not their brother's keeper. They don't care about the poor. And this is coming from a multi-millionaire who has a brother in Africa living on $1 a day.
Yeah. Obviously, he doesn't care about poor people then either. I tried to describe to you how I see them. I see these politicians like Hillary and Michelle and Obama and all of them up in this big, tall building. You know, if you've ever been to the Prudential Tower or the Space Needle or any of the tall monuments, when you looked out the window and you look down at the ground, the people look like ants and the cars look just like little toy cars, little Tonka cars or Matchbox cars. You don't see those people. You don't know those people. You don't know that everybody in those cars has a life or a family or a job. You know, all they are is just ants to you. It's insignificant. The people that you see on the same level as you are in that room with you. You know, all the people that, if you look around and you see other people, yeah, they're the same height as you and the same distance away from you and all of that. So those people you pay attention to, but the ones out the window down there, the little ants, you don't care about them. You don't even know them.
No,
and that's what it feels like.
Giving people governors' mansions and stuff like this, it's all to separate you from the people you are supposed to be representing in the first place. You know, you're not even in their class anymore, and so they look down at you like you're just a peon. You know, let them eat cake if they don't like it.
Exactly.
Sort of thing.
Yeah. And our rules don't apply to them. Our laws don't apply to them. As a matter of fact, Judge Hannon, he's the judge down in Texas that put the injunction on the Obama administration over the immigration, given the Dreamers extended stays and Social Security cards and stuff. Well, the administration went to court and admitted that they had lied to this judge, that they still were giving out green cards and work permits and things that the judge had put an injunction on and said not to do that. And they went to the court and they lied, and they were like, well, you know, we lied. I think they should be disbarred, actually. But the Valley Star says, while the U.S. government again expressed its regret about erroneous information it's provided to U.S. District Judge Andrew S. Hannon, he issued a supplemental order restating that Texas and 25 other states do have standing to sue Obama's administration. He also reaffirmed his decision not to lift his preliminary injunction on new immigration initiatives. He gave them until May 20th to come up with every piece of information that the governor of Texas, Abbott there, he was the attorney general then, and the other 25 states, they want every piece of information, and they better have it by May 20th. And he also recommended that these lawyers be investigated by the Department of Justice. They got 1,000 lawyers. They did not make a mistake. This was very much intentional. As a matter of fact, on this show, we gave you information that our D.C. insider, who knows all about this, told us that on Monday there was supposed to be this decision by Judge Hannon. The previous Friday, the government sent the employees home early and told them over the weekend put as many of those illegals into the system as they possibly could, because once they are entered into the system, they have a pending status, so they can't be booted out. Well, they did it after Monday came and went, and the judge had put his order on. They kept doing it, to the point of like 100,000 of them that were entered into that system after Monday. Yeah, there are probably 400,000 over the weekend.
Well,
and then they said, yeah, we did it, so what?
Yeah.
And not only did they do that.
No one.
No, they're not going to arrest her. But not only did those people put all that information in, those temporary permits were for 2 years. They upped it to 3 years. So you can't deport them for 3 years if they have pending status. So they screwed the judge, they screwed us, they screwed everybody. They went into court, they said we lied. What are you going to do about it? You know, who at the DOJ is going to look into that? What lawyer is going to get in trouble? And they treat this district judge like he's a piece of work, too. He's been a district judge a long time.
He's nothing. He's nothing. He's also low, man, on the totem pole.
Yeah, and they treat him like, you know, like secondhand news. They didn't care what he did. They don't give a damn.
No, they don't.
and nobody's holding their feet to the fire. This judge is trying, but, he's just getting slapped around.
That's right.
And then, on top of it, DHS says that they don't even keep track of the illegals that they allow to stay. So they're not even putting them in a system. Now, if they decide, all right, say you got a bunch of people come across the border, and the boss over there, the captain of the Border Patrol, looks them over and says, we're not going to hold on to them. They just get to walk out the door. They're free. And they don't keep track of that. So nothing even gets entered into paperwork. So they're not violating the judge's order if they're not even putting them in the system, right? They just say, okay, go ahead, see ya. Have a nice life. And they're allowed to walk out the door. Then, this Friday, a woman put out a video. She was at a gas station over at the border checkpoint. These 8 buses had just come across the border. And she was able to talk to the guy driving the bus, and he said, that they were detainees, that they were from Somalia and other African nations, and he was taking them to a detention center, which is 160 miles away. It was Victorville. And he told them, that they use the secret word, asylum, and they get to stay. Now, there was 8 buses full of Somalis. Somalis are Muslims. The 2 guys that tried to kill P.M. Geller, they were Somalis. A couple more tried to join ISIS, and they were busted. These people are not even getting checked. They're not getting entered into the system. These ones were, so there must have been a reason they detained these. But the rest of them just got to walk away. The U.S. is bringing in 100,000 Muslims every year through legal channels, such as the United Nations. And we're relying on the United Nations to vet these people. World Daily says they're coming in from Somalia and other African nations, according to a Homeland Security official who was caught recently transporting a busload of Africans to a detention center near Victorville, California. Somalia is the home base of Al-Shabaab, a designated terrorist organization. They slaughtered 147 Christians at a university in Kenya just last month. And we're letting them in? And the guy says, the woman says, detention center over here, Fuentes asked. The guy replies, yes. Victorville's about 161 miles from the Mexican border. And she says, is that because they're crossing the border, Fuentes asked. He said, well, they're coming in and asking for asylum, he said. That's what it is. That's the special keyword, huh? That's the password now, Fuentes said. He said that's what the password is now. The flow of information stopped when Fuentes asked about the presence of ISIS near the border, a story which the watchdog agency Judicial Watch reported last month. ISIS being at the border, she asked. He said, I'm not going to talk to you when you're recording me, ma'am. And that was the end of the video.
Oh, man.
You know damn well ISIS is at the border. ISIS is not just in the border. They were in Garland, Texas last week. Taking responsibility for trying to kill Geller.
They don't have to be at the border. They're flying in these radicals from all over these countries that hate our guts and are being trained in facilities by our own government. So they don't have to sneak across anything. They don't have to,
no, they don't.
go across the border. They didn't
have to sneak across the border at all. They were brought in by bus.
Right.
I wonder where they were picked up
at. Labeled Syrian refugees and from all these other countries and turned into whatever boogeymen that the government needs to take more of your rights away and justify the military rolling tanks through your tiny town.
Mm-hmm. Hey, we got to take a quick break. We talked a long time today.
I think we're out of time almost, aren't we?
Almost, yeah. Hey, sorry about the little abbreviated break. I was looking at the clock thinking that we were going to take a break in 7 minutes, and then I'm saying, oh, wait a minute, this is a short show. Maybe not. Hey, I want to tell you one more thing before we go. Let's get back to Baltimore for a second. Remember the mayor said that she had a destroy zone, and all these people were looting, and they thought that they were getting away with everything, and Now they're all getting busted and not realizing why they're getting busted. As a matter of fact, 2 corrections officers, both of them women, Tamika Cobb and Kendra Richard, were charged with theft and 2 counts of burglary, according to a statement released by the Maryland Department of Public Safety. They said that on April 25th, which was the first day of the major unrest, they had been looting at the 7-Eleven. Remember, we saw all the pictures of the people just going in and out of the store? Well, they got busted. So even now, they're screwing people. You know, they wanted those riots. But now they're arresting people. You know, here's all these people thinking, okay, we're going to loot and we're going to have a great time and we got this free zone to do whatever we want to do. And now they're getting busted and they're not realizing why they're getting busted. And that's just another way that they were used. They needed the riots. They needed the people to go looting. They needed all the attention. It's always about the money, power, or both. You know, you got the state's attorney up on stage with Prince singing Ode to Freddie songs. Okay, so what kind of a fair trial are the cops going to have there? That, you know, but now the people, too, they criminalized him again. They let him do it, and now they busted him.
Well, yeah,
so
you know, they're not.
Don't fall for it, people. If they tell you it's okay to riot, don't do it.
So it generates some state revenue.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, they want more money. They get $14,000 per student, and they want more money for the schools, and they want more money for the special programs in the districts, like you know the one. They're promise zones and the things like My Brother's Keeper and all that money. That's just going into politicians' pockets. You know damn well that none of that money's going to see any of those people that were out there rioting in the streets. And one other thing about Baltimore. Remember last week on TV there was a alleged shooting, a cop in the middle of the street holding his gun out, a young man lying in the street, a gunshot heard. Everybody there said that cop shot that guy in cold blood. So you can't believe your eyes because the cop never fired a shot. The kid was running and his pants were down around his knees, so he tripped and fell face forward. When he did, his gun fell out of his waistband and went off. It looked like the cop was standing there with his gun drawn. You absolutely did hear a gunshot, absolutely did see somebody lying in the street, but it wasn't what it was. So never believe anything you hear and only half of what you see. And that's the last of my advice today. You got any advice for our listeners?
No, buy guns. Pray a lot.
Advice too. That's even better advice. All right. Well, say good night, everybody. See you next week.
Good night. Good night, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Scott. All right, everybody. That's all the time we have for today. And thank you for tuning in. Thanks for listening to me go on and on and on, too. This is Zone 13, and we're here every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. To our listeners, callers, colleagues, and all you folks that called in, thank you very much. As always, a special thank you to Scott Ferrarello, my awesome co-host, and to the wonderful colleagues, Lynn, Anna, and AstroTurf. Stay tuned to freedomizerradio.com all week to keep up with the latest news and all the information you can use, and we'll see you here next Thursday. On that note, good night, everybody. Zone 13 out.